Hello, people out there in internet land. Welcome to the Land Down Under Hangout. Tonight we are talking about This Is How You Lose the Time War, pretty book, for one of our mini reads, which was voted on by the group. I, however, have not finished this book, so I can't give my opinion. So I'm just going to throw it to a person, and we'll just each person throw it to someone else. Okay. So let's start off with Kirsten.
Oh, me first.
Yeah.
Took me quite a lot to get into this. It was I think lots of us were talking in the chat about it being quite a flowery writing style, and I did find it felt very literary, and I was like, I am not smart enough to read this book. But once I got into it, I actually did enjoy it, and I particularly liked the letters section. Like it kind of, you'd had a letter and then you'd have a bit of story and then another letter. I really liked the letters, and I really liked the interaction between the two main characters. But it wasn't an easy, quick read, and I was kind of expecting it to be a quick read because it was a novella, and it was like not. So I read it as a Kindle book. I didn't do the audiobook, which I normally do, but I don't like paying full price for an audiobook that's really short, which is weird because I don't mind with a normal book, but I don't know. So yes. Interested to hear what other people thought.
Someone?
I'll go. Okay, so quite similar to Kirsten, it took me ages to get into this book. I mean, I tried the Kindle and then I did the audiobook, and both were not working, and then I finally just steamed through and finished it today. But again, like Kirsten, it was just a bit too flowery for my taste, and I don't think you have to be smart to read it. I think it's just a matter of whether you have the focus or the patience to just enjoy that writing. And for me, at this current point of time, with what's going on, I did not have that focus to go, oh, this is great. I just went, just read, keep on going through it. But yeah, again, I think my favorite part was probably the letters. I really like the relationship between Red and Blue, but otherwise, anything out of that, just outside the letters, felt a bit too, I don't know, I didn't enjoy it that much. So, but anyway, someone else can go.
I'll go. I enjoyed it. I think it'd be a tough one. I probably wouldn't recommend it to many people, and it's not up there on my favorites list. Again, it did, like everybody's saying, it did take a while to get into it. It was very flowery in the beginning, but I felt like I adjusted to that as it went on. It was not a book I could read with any distractions around me because of the language. It was really hard if there was people in the background talking to actually concentrate on it. I felt like it needed a lot of concentration to read, but I really did enjoy the back and forth between the characters, and hearing about their worlds, like about Garden and about, I can't remember what
the agency was called.
The agency. I enjoyed them talking about that part. I think those two things were my favorite, them talking about their respective agencies and the letters themselves. But yeah, I'd be hard pressed to recommend it to everyone because I think it's a very niche book, and it's not necessarily, I enjoyed it, but it's not enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to read, but I did enjoy it in the end. Yeah.
Sarah, would you like to go next?
Sure. This was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like it reminded me a lot of Circe, but with the lack, like it was very much like poetry with a bit of a plot to me. And so it was okay. And I can't actually say that I enjoyed it because I looked at the audiobook and I did find it hard to track whose letter against who was speaking, the two narrators, like who was speaking in the letter versus who was then narrating for Blue or Red. So I found it hard to keep track of. I did the same thing as I think was Kim and Liv said, you like to really be able to concentrate. And I'm doing an audiobook, I'm wandering around, and I just had to keep rewinding, like, what was that? Did I understand that? What was that? I quite liked how they hid the letters, but there seemed to be a lot of animals that suffered in the consequence. So it was a bit, but yeah, and I think the thing that I would have enjoyed more, but that wasn't what the story was knowing more about the what do you call it, the cases, I don't know what you would call it, the cases that they had, the targets, there's a name for it and I can't think what it is. Like a CIA agent has their thing. Anyway, missions, yeah, I'd like to have known more about what their missions were and who they were. I couldn't work out for a while whether are they put into this world or they take on the characters of somebody else, like that I found. And this is just also, in fairness, because I enjoy sci-fi, and I don't enjoy, as we know from the ice one, Pushing Ice, I don't enjoy it when it's like so deeply descriptive without plot driven, but there was just some of these aspects that I was looking forward to from a world building kind of perspective. But this is a love story of poetry that has a bit of a semblance of a plot, and that's not really what I was. Sorry, there's another one like Pushing Ice. I was really intrigued by the premise, but it wasn't quite what I had signed up for. It wasn't what I expected. So yeah, and like Kim said, I'd be hard pressed to know who to recommend this to. I probably, if someone's really into poetry, I'd recommend it to them. So, but yeah, and I'd be interested to know, I have no take on this, but I want to know from Elizabeth and Mel. This is on the Hugo, list. I really want to know what you guys think about that.
Lots of thoughts on that front.
Sorry, what was that?
I said I have lots of thoughts on that front.
Okay, cool. Anyway, sorry. I'm drinking a Negroni.
Nice. I've red wine. Because I thought I'd rather with the red wine than
Coke,
the
no
blue drink. I've chosen the
Blue
red
nail
side.
polish.
Ah, nice.
Someone got a blue, something blue in there. Nice.
Yep.
So, Elizabeth.
So I would definitely have to agree that this is a book that is style over substance. Though that said, like everyone here and everyone in chat was remarking on that it was a flowery book to read. So I actually found it less flowery than I was expecting.
Ditto. After hearing everybody say that, I was like, hey, it doesn't seem that bad. What's going on?
Yeah, a lot less flowery than I was expecting, for sure. That said, it was a book that you couldn't rush. I definitely read this slower than I would normally read a novella. What else to say? I felt it lacked clarity in places. It was definitely a bit abstract with some elements. So yeah, definitely focusing on style over substance. I found it also, I felt like it actually had a lot of in-jokes. Yeah. But I enjoyed it overall. Yeah. Just a very, I feel like it's a book of the moment and for a particular crowd, definitely.
Yep. And on that flowery note, it's probably because I went into it knowing absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It told me it was flowery before I started reading it. So I guess
which is why I think the saying that I thought it wasn't that bad, because I was expecting it to be ridiculously over the top. I was like,
I think we just couldn't think of a word to describe it, and
maybe just wordy.
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
It's very descriptive. A lot of description and yet not. Look, I found at the beginning I had to kind of just let it wash over me and go, I don't understand what's going on, but I'm not really supposed to at this point, and you need to just get used to that and read anyway. And my brain was going, but I don't understand what's going on, and I had to make myself just stop being annoyed by that and just keep reading and trust that I would work it out as it went along. I think that was part of it. but yeah.
Yeah. I would like to know from Elizabeth and Kim, what do you mean by in-jokes? Do you mean between the two of them? Do you mean in literary circles?
Literary circles, I
Literary
think.
circles.
There was a
Yeah, like
few
if
that
we
I picked up
hadn't
on.
if we hadn't read Circe, I would
Yeah.
have had no idea about the is it see, I forget the name. Scylla and I've forgotten the name of the big portal,
Yeah.
the big
Yeah.
water sucky in thing, and the monster. See, if we hadn't read Circe, that would have gone straight over my head.
There's also references to Ozymandias. It's a poem called Ozymandias. That I only remember it really clearly because it was on the Queensland Core Skills Test the year that I was in year 12, and it was on that was our HSC test. And
Yeah.
I still remember that poem I nearly remember the entire poem because it was on that test. And yet, if I hadn't read that poem, I wouldn't have known that. And so, because there were a couple of things I picked up, I was like, how many things have I not picked up? That
Yeah, and
I'm pretty sure I skimmed over some.
Yeah, now you say that, I know I was missing something. Like I was so sure, like the whole weaving thing. I'm going, I feel like this is a reference to a mythology or a culture, you know, and coming from New Zealand and South Pacific nations, I'm like, is this drawing on, you know, the big, so in Maori culture, they talk about the big, oh God, and I'm really bad and I forgot my word and I would get offline to say it, but they basically had a big canoe, which is not the right word, I'll think of it, that they got everybody to New Zealand on. So it's this whole about the weaving of the creation of that. And I'm like, is it referring to that? So there's a lot of this where I was like going, am I supposed to know? Like, is this, you know, and there were definitely, but there were things, because I did classical studies, there were definitely references in terms of Greek and Roman stuff I got. But yeah, I'm really curious to know, like, what else was I missing? Like,
there was also a bunch of stuff that kind of relates more personally to the writers.
Okay.
So, for example, you know, when I think it's Blue busts into the computer world, and there's a line there where she says, Ontario sucks. Ontario is where Amal El-Mohtar lives. She lives in Toronto. Right.
I assume that was an American thing.
Well, that's
that I just didn't get.
So was it a reference by the American against the Canadians province?
No, I think it was, I think it might have been Amal herself. So I kind of, all the way through, I found myself kind of trying to work out who had written which character, if that was the way that they did it, because I'm not sure, but I presume that was the way they approached it. And my conclusion was that Max Gladstone had written Red and Amal El-Mohtar had written Blue. Mostly because I found Red's sections more action-oriented, whereas Blue's sections are kind of more poetic and a bit more abstract and vague, which I feel by and large fits in with their writing styles. Not that I've read much of Max Gladstone's work, but certainly Amal's tends to write in a very poetic way. For example, one of her publications is a collection of like, I guess it's like flash fiction, more like kind of fragments, called The Honey Month, where she kind of tasted 30 different honeys and for each one wrote like a something based on that kind of, inspired by that bit of honey. So that like is kind of, again, playing with language and stuff, and also is why I wasn't surprised to find honey coming up in this book as well, as an interest of hers.
Yeah. People
And
who are
birds
into
too.
honey are really into honey.
Yeah. Well, I think Amal is really into honey and also birds.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the more fairish stuff, like there was talk of like exchanging jackets with a smuggler, which I was like, oh, that sounds very Star Wars, sorry. Doesn't it?
Yep.
And because Amal can definitely be very fairish. I know she was big into Hamilton, so it wouldn't surprise me if I missed some references to Hamilton through the book as well.
Nice. I found, I don't know if did anyone else do the audiobook?
Right.
Okay, I'm the only one. I spent a bit of, and I still find I get confused about who is who, because the letter is constantly talking about the other person, you know.
I did lose track every now and again and have to
You
stop
know,
and remind
my
myself who I
Scarlet,
was.
my
Yeah.
Scarlet, my, you know, my cock and shield, I can't even say that, but, you know, all these
Cochineal.
references, all these red references, but that's not red speaking. And I would go,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just was I know one of them's softer and one of them's a bit more, you know, I think, like you said, Elizabeth, action orientated, but I just don't remember who is who. And I don't remember who was Garden and who was Agency. I just couldn't. I just don't know.
I had trouble with that too, and I did the ebook, so I didn't do the audiobook, and I still had trouble with that and I think it was because you had the letter that was written by one, and then you were with
the one who'd read it,
the one who was reading it. Yeah,
or
and
the
then
one
you
who'd
were
written
with
it.
and then they wrote the next letter, and then it was like, hang on, what? I'm confused. Like,
I definitely lost track a couple of times and had to stop and just remind myself who was, like, I could remember that red was Agency and blue was Garden, but I kept losing track of who I was reading. And had to go, okay, who am I? Oh, okay, the letters to red, this is blue who's writing this, and
Yeah, I think I read this very fast, so
I did read it fast, but pretty much I read when it was quiet.
See, I rushed it because I was trying to get it read in time so that Matt could read it, which obviously didn't work because he's
still reading.
But like, I read it in like 2 days, and a lot of it was sitting and reading while the kids were doing stuff, and so I was like, had background noise and stuff. So yeah, that probably didn't help with my finding it difficult. But yeah.
Is Matt finding that it's not a book for him? Because from what I've read, I would have said it's not his book. Even though it's time travel.
He's sticking with it. But I wouldn't have, like, it's not the kind of, like, there's books where I read it and I go, Matt, you need to read this. This is a you book, which I said to him about The Expanse, which he took forever to bloody read. And then when he did read it, he's devoured all of them. He's finished them all now because I was right, and I know him, and I know what he likes. He doesn't always listen to me. But if I had read this and it wasn't like for a hangout, I would not have told him to read it. I would not have said, hey, you should read this, because it's not the sort of thing I would normally recommend to him.
Yeah.
But like I think it was you, Kim, saying, I don't know who you would recommend it to. Like,
I know who I would recommend it to. Elizabeth.
I did actually enjoy it on the whole, even if I felt like it wasn't as solid as it could be.
I mean, there's people I would recommend it to, but I mean, that's saying I haven't finished it, of course, but I feel like there's people I would recommend it to. It's just they're very, very specific people.
Yeah. I would recommend this to John Green, but I don't know John Green, and I'm pretty sure he would read it. Yeah, he would enjoy this.
He would. I reckon you're right.
Yeah. And when you talked about who would I recommend this to, he's the only person that came into my head.
Whereas I've got like lots of podcasters and things that I listen to. I'd be like, yeah, they should definitely read this. They would love this and things like that. In fact, I think it was probably podcasters I heard about it from. So
yeah,
I know like specific YouTubers who focus more on the writing than the actual the characters or anything like that. Then book. But for me, where my most important thing is the character.
Yeah.
Then comes the writing. Writing, of course, has to be nice to read, but I don't focus on wordplay or anything like that. I just want something that will tell me like escapism.
I love an epistolary story though. So even though generally I'm definitely more of a character person, having an epistolary story is just like mwah, to me.
What's that language you were using, Mel? I don't know if I know that word.
No, thank you, Sarah. I don't
It's
either.
a story by letters.
Oh, right.
Mel would know that.
So have you read the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Society?
Multiple times. And don't say anything as to I know. I know. Sorry, this is a long-standing thing. I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
I could see your face.
Cool.
Yeah, is that
We got anything else going?
I mean,
yeah,
like,
I guess my advice would be Matt and I like a lot of the same stuff, which is why it frustrates me as it does you, is that he has not read Mistborn, because he would enjoy that.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake, Matt. It's like, exactly, it's like going, Matt, you and I, we're like this, and your wife has also said this, like, read fucking Mistborn. You would love it. You would love it. And you're a fucking gamer, and this whole thing is like a video game with a plot. It's so good.
And it's even finished, so it's not even like any of the other Sandersons that you're like still waiting for him to finish it.
It's done. It's so, I keep thinking, I think about that, and I keep going, I would love to see that either made or turned into an anime, or more likely I want to play it as a video game. That's what I want to play it as. Anyway, that's by the by. Yeah, but what I was going to say is Matt shouldn't bother. There's better places for him to spend his time. It's not his, because it told me it was 4.5 hours, but I swear this took me like 6 to get through, maybe closer to, I don't know, it just took me a
All
lot
the
longer.
rewinding. Yeah.
But I feel like that's possibly exacerbated by doing audiobook.
It doesn't really seem like an audiobook kind of story.
No, I wouldn't. I would never recommend audiobook on this. Like,
It'd be a lot harder.
I'm struggling, but that's because of my brain at the moment. But I didn't find it hard to read.
No, and don't get me wrong, the narrators were great, but they probably sounded slightly too similar.
I think part of the problem I had with it is the same problem I have with everything that's this length, is that I wanted more world building, and there's not really the time to do more world building in like, I was really interested in these two factions, and I wanted more detail about why they were doing what they were doing. And I mean, just sort of got a bit of an idea, but like you were saying, Sarah, like, what were their particular missions, like why were they in this particular time period, and what was important about that? Like, I just
I think this is the problem of
that's just me as a reader. Like, I like to read gigantic long things that have lots of detail, and
I think that's one of the things about novellas is that they have to have, for them to be good, they have to have the concept of a novel behind them, but you have to accept that you're not going to get the detail of the novel.
Yeah, and I'm not good with that. I'm like, but I need the other stuff. Like, and it does. You're right. It does feel like the world, like that it's the world building is there, but we're just getting. It's like watching one episode of a TV series that you haven't seen the rest of the show. And like, it's still like there are a lot of TV shows where you can just watch one episode and like it's constructed well enough that you can kind of get an idea of what's going on without needing to have seen everything. But you could, it's so much better if you've seen everything.
See, I'm going to have to disagree there. I feel like it was a good thing that they didn't have more detail about their missions, because it was entirely irrelevant, not only to the plot, but also to the characters. See, the characters, like, it's just same old thing for them. And they've got no heart in it. And that's exactly the point. Whereas if you'd invested more detail, like, I think it would have been harder to kind of sympathize with the characters in some respects, because you'll be like, but it's all this interesting stuff. And
I guess it was more like I wanted to know the stakes of, like, their choices to kind of go against what, like, like,
so totally,
you knew more about the stakes involved than the choice to join together and not be doing as they were told, basically. I don't know. I guess it's just me as a reader. I always want to know more. I always want.
Would you say that about Good Omens?
No, but then Good Omens was a full-length novel.
And I was going to ask whether or not this was
about Good Omens. It's so funny you should say that, because I was just thinking how similar this was to Good Omens, in that this same thing of, like, we've been doing this shit for ages, and, like, it, you know, we're supposedly on opposite sides. Like, very, but yeah, Good Omens was a lot longer and had a
But if
I
you took
definitely
only
enjoyed
the
the
parts
Rams
with Crowley and what's his face, Aziraphale,
Aziraphale.
Aziraphale, yeah.
would it be longer?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be about the same actually, because there's a fair bit that's with Adam, and then you've got the Four Horsemen as well, and
What's her face? Oh, I've forgotten her name.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
The witch, Agnes
yes,
Nutter,
Agnes Nutter, yeah.
or her great granddaughter, or
Yeah, what was
whatever.
her name? Oh,
Yeah,
that's gonna
it's the
annoy
granddaughter
me.
actually that matters there, but
Yeah.
I think,
anyway,
yeah.
basically we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I agree that with Elizabeth, like the whole the reasons weren't important. Like that was secondary to the whole thing. But the problem was there were these really great hints at the world, but then nothing got expanded. So for instance, in the first I think the first chapter, they're like talking about the exoskeletons in their skins and how they're like feeling their flesh and their mechanical, and it was really it was so interesting and it was promising. I was like, oh, okay, like I can feel this a bit. And then I don't know if anyone else felt this, but I felt like the end was a bit rushed. Like I felt like I kind of just I just had to let it wash over me by the end, where who is it? Red, who's not Garden? Is it Red?
Yeah, Red is agency, Blue's garden.
Okay, good. See, I can't remember. Is going down and collecting all the things. Like, and I figured that out. Like, it was. Did anyone else figure it out that was the shadow?
I have to admit, I actually thought it was someone else. I kind of thought that it might have been a child of theirs, for example. Collecting like pieces of like their courtship so that to make sure that she would exist in the future.
Oh, that would have
It'd be
been
like
interesting.
a purple or something.
Yeah, that'd have been cool.
Yeah, no, I thought it was like someone from one of the sides that was spying on them, that they were going to get caught, basically. But I really liked the end. I liked the little twist. Not really, I don't know, would you call it a twist?
Loop?
But I liked, yeah.
Yeah, it was, but I kind of felt like it was all about trying to do it so quickly and hurtling through and tasting stuff. And then when she actually got into Garden proper, it just kind of, it's in that classic way of like, well, none of this, like the world is not important compared to the emotion. But I was like, I'm so interested in what this is, and it just felt like what do they call it when you're in like hyperdrive or like tunnel vision? That's how it kind of felt in that last sort of chapter. When, well, not the last chapter.
No, but that sequence, the kind of
so I don't know, but I think this is one of those things that I just had to let this wash over me and not try and remember who was who and what was going on. I thought the Ohio River thing was kind of cool, and I kept wondering, and then of course I kept saying the Ohio River and everything afterwards. Does anyone know what that was a reference to?
Ohio River?
Yeah, she said she was like sitting by the banks of the Ohio River. It's one of the places she first got a message, I think, when they started to train. And I was like, oh, is this a reference to, like, is there a reason they're next to the Ohio River? Is this a important, like, historical thing? Does anyone know? Because, yeah, I got no senses what you, Elizabeth and Kim, were talking about there was, like, little nudges and winks at people. And I was like, I feel like this is important in some way. Is one of the authors from Ohio?
I just looked up Max Gladstone, and his Twitter lists him as being in Cambridge, MA, so Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's Massachusetts.
So I'm not
I
sure.
stayed there.
Did you like the tea part? That was probably my favorite bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Delightful. Although, man, that was a long letter. And reading it in a teacup would have taken forever.
Although you
can't,
I think you had to kind of accept that, like the way that they were reading these letters, like
in all
of them, it was like, but okay, this is just I'm
Yeah,
just going
that
to
was
ignore the
one-
fact that this is like, how does
Yeah.
this be? How is this a letter?
Yeah.
But it was
that
really
something
cool.
got
That
me a
was one of
little-
the things I really liked, was like the different forms that the letters were in.
There was a lot of
oh,
feeling people between the teeth. I felt you, but you know that you take
Thank
the
you.
seed between your teeth and you roll. And I was like, wow, they're really obsessed with teeth.
I'm trying to find what my notes were.
Oh, actually, one thing I did notice, so she was relating it to something towards this region called Wuhan, and I went, wait a minute, what?
Yes,
yeah, they
yes,
mentioned
I remember
Wuhan,
that.
and I'm like, hey.
I was like, yeah, because she had the Genghis Khan section, and I kind of saw that coming. And then they said to Wuhan, and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, radio. I know what that means now.
It will forever mean something different. Oh dear.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I highlighted. Like I highlighted a couple of things that were referencing Ozymandias, because there's a line that says, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair," and that's a line directly from that poem.
That's where that was from, because she did say that line, and I'm like, I know that line.
And then later on, like 7 pages later, she says, "My regards to the vast and trunkless legs of stone," and that's another line from that poem. And I'm like, and I'm reading it going, but if I didn't have this weird connection that makes me remember that poem really well, I would not know what they were talking about there. And Ozymandias is like about this, it's like a shattered statue of, I think Ozymandias is Ramesses, because I Googled it after. I was like, what? I'm trying to remember what the whole poem. And yeah, it's like this guy that is in the desert and comes across this statue of Ramesses that's obviously, you know, fallen over, and so there's these 2 legs that are standing up with no, like the rest of it's fallen down, and the face of the statue is lying in the ground. And yeah, and I was like,
it's like the
oh,
last remnants of a fallen empire.
yeah, which I thought was really interesting. And then the other thing that I highlighted that I was like, this is a weird thing to just randomly mention. And it says, she thinks of ortolan as she chews the plant's fibers, considers draping her head in white cloth for closer communion. Did any of you guys know what that meant? So if you Google ortolan, it's like this bird that is illegal to eat because it's like endangered, but people still eat it because it's considered this delicacy. And like they do this thing where you cover your head with the thing while you eat it because it's supposed to be like you're not supposed to watch anyone else eat. I don't know. There's some weird thing about, like, you have to Google ortolan, but like there's this whole ritual around eating it that's like.
That's not the one. Is that the one where you have to? Is that the French one where you put the napkin over your head?
Yeah. And it's like you eat it when it's like it's really hot, and you're supposed to put the whole thing in your mouth. And I only read about it in this Anthony Bourdain book where he talks about how he went to this place and he's eating it, and he's like, he knows it's actually illegal, but like this chef had it like took him into this back room in this restaurant, and they had this ortolan. It's like a big thing. And I was like, again, it's like this really obscure
ortolan.
reference.
Here you are. Yeah, ortolan is served in French cuisine, typically eaten, cooked, and eaten whole. Traditionally, diners cover their heads with a napkin or a towel eating the delicacy. The bird is so widely used that its French population dropped dangerously low, leading to laws restricting its use in 1999.
But yeah, there's this whole thing about, and I was like, how many things like that are in this book that I didn't get? Like, this is one that I understood because I knew about it, but how many of them are in this book that,
Yeah, I've seen that on a cooking show.
And what's the deal? Like, why do they do it? Is it about like?
I think it's so small and so like you said, delicacy. It's about maybe enveloping yourself in the entire experience and not having anyone look at you. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yes.
But those were the couple of things that I highlighted, just going like so that I would remember to talk about them, because I was like, yeah.
One other thing that I did like was the way that Blue slowed down for her mission, for that big long mission.
The one where the weaving one.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting approach to a time war. Something that you might not necessarily expect, but makes a lot of sense in retrospect.
Yep. And there was also the one with Genghis Khan where one of them had been in the service of Genghis for like 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
20 years.
the weaving one, like that was 20, 30 years or so. So
20
it was,
years for the Genghis one, so I'm not sure about the other one. I haven't read that one yet.
yeah. Very interesting. Was there any rhyme or reason to the sequences? Do they bounce all over the place, or because we started in kind of future state from now, and then we visited Genghis, and we visited 1800s tea house, and I just wondered if anyone saw any timelines. I liked the way that they referred to it as strands.
I did think that
threads.
was really interesting.
I really like that.
I got confused about when they were saying they were going up strand or down strand, and I was like, which one is forward and which one is backwards?
Yes.
Yeah. I still don't know.
I think it sounded backwards to me, like future was downstrand and past was upstrand.
Yeah, that makes sense because the past has already sort of been weaved and the future is not
come
yet.
Down.
Yeah,
that makes sense actually. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah.
And all the many strands.
Yes.
Yeah. I liked it because I this year I watched Your Name.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I highly recommend. I loved it.
Great. Yeah.
So good. I loved it. I've watched it a couple of times now. I love it. I love the music. I love everything. And it weaving and talking about the strands coming together and and coming apart, and that is what community is. That's what unity is. That's what relationships are. That's why I really love that idea of strands and threads in this, because I kind of had this lovely, I already had this learning from Your Name that applied really nicely in this one. So, yeah, I don't know
Sarah,
if anyone else had that.
Are you going to read the Dodo book?
You mean the Tuesday Next ones?
No. 2 seconds.
She had a dodo.
Yeah, she had a pet dodo.
No. This is called the Dodo, which refers to the agency. Just a second.
Is this like a follow-on from this?
No, it's a completely different series.
So a different agency.
Yeah.
It's not a series, it's a single book. There is a possibility of there being more. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find it really fast.
Yeah, I know it was one of our multiple picks, but we didn't pick it at one stage.
Oh, okay.
The Rise and Fall of Dodo?
That's it.
Neil Stevenson.
I would recommend that one for you, Sarah. It's very much the time travel.
Cool. Finding history.
And I did it in audiobook and it worked quite well, even though it is basically found files and stuff.
Oh, there's someone called Melisandre.
Huh.
Yes.
No.
It's and it's not a short one, but the audiobook works well because they do there's lots of players playing characters.
That sounds good. Yeah, I just might want to read. So that sounds really good. I also like it because it does. Have you looked at this one, Kirsten? Because it does remind me of Tuesday Next.
It's not like Tuesday Next at all.
No, but there's time traveling. And there's,
But Tuesday's Next is not time traveling. That's traveling through books, stories. That's different.
There's time travel in it too.
There's definitely time
travel. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is time travel, but it's not in any way like that sort of whimsical type stuff that you get from Tuesday Next.
I mean, you said Neil Stevenson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nicola Gallant. No, Gallant? Galland.
Yeah, he writes for someone else,
Oh.
which I think is the only reason why
I have it on my want to read list, even though I
have
couldn't
talked
remember
about it before. I have talked about it before.
I probably
so-
added it last time you mentioned it and then never got around to it.
Yeah, I was this time I was specifically recommending it for Sarah because I really do think Sarah should read it.
Right. I don't know how to take. I never know how to take Elizabeth like knowing every single author when she goes, and it's Neil Stephenson, right? And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
It means he doesn't do whimsical. Like
I
he's
haven't
not a
read any of his.
whimsical
I just
writer.
remember that Mel took a really long time to get through Seven Eves.
Oh
Was
God,
that-
Seven Eves. Let's not talk about Seven Eves.
Oh, this.
I've tried reading that one.
It was on Seven Eves was on the Hugo ballot like a couple of years back now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's probably
I
why
don't
Mel
think I
had it
got
on
to
her
that
list.
one. Yeah.
you didn't miss out on anything.
Good to know. I mean, I still have the digital file somewhere, so I could drag it out and read it if I wanted to. But
It's really freaking long, and he messes up big time, in my opinion.
Ooh.
We'll see if I ever get
Coming
to
for
it.
ya.
Well, it's one of those things.
I
That
don't know
the concept was brilliant. Like I was
Yeah.
like the concept of this, brilliant, but he messes up big time and just
So-
destroys the whole story.
Just like the
so.
Pushing Ice one. Yeah. Concept.
Yeah.
Awesome. Execution. Terrible.
Yes, and he, because of the kind of writer that he is, it's not even like I could say, oh, but it was an enjoyable read still. Nope.
So do you say that Dodo is not enjoyable?
No, Dodo's fine. Dodo's fine, but it's been tempered by a second writer, and I find that can make a big difference with certain writers.
Oh yeah.
Hello, Jay Christoph. So I think that it was his case, but
Yeah.
also Dodo's a very different type of book. Most of the time, Neil Stephenson writes extremely hard sci-fi type books.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dodo
yeah.
is not a hard sci-fi book,
yeah.
first
No,
of all.
that's it. Because that was the problem with Pushing Ice. It was too hard sci-fi, not enough like
They're
I care
kind
about
of-
these people.
Those two are a kind of, I would say, of a kind, like as
Yeah.
writers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too is that he does bring his science brain to the Dodo book, but it's
Yeah.
tempered. It's
Yeah.
tempered by having someone else write in
And
with
goes,
him.
characters, let's care about them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I mean,
Yeah.
there were elements of, I don't think I gave it 5 stars. I think I gave it like 4 or something. There are elements
That's
that are
alright, yeah.
fantastic, and there are elements of it that are, but
Yeah.
as a read and as a time travel book, I think is one I would highly
Well,
recommend to you.
Matt and I should check that out because Matt and I are big into time travel
I
stuff.
also would
I
recommend
love
that,
time
yeah.
travel.
But the
Yes,
only
true,
thing I
true,
would
true.
say, is possibly something to be aware of that some people don't like is that it's written in found documents. So it's not a straight story. It's written through found documents.
Oh, as long as it's not as tough as that bloody. Oh God, what was
The
that?
S. Was it S?
Yeah.
S was totally different though, because while it was found documents, it was also a book of itself, and you had multiple read-throughs technically to read the timeline.
Oh, that was
different
the
colour
hard.
text
I gave up.
Yeah.
I gave
Yeah.
up. I didn't care enough.
Yeah, this is different. It is still linear. It's still told in a linear fashion, but it's just
Yeah.
told through the found documents that have been put together in a linear fashion. So you won't
Okay,
find
I
it that
will be back.
frustrating.
Oh, I'll be back.
My
But
problem
one
with-
thought to leave you with though is where those kind of things work really well. Video games. If you want to tell stories like this, non-linear, video games. Brilliant. Anyway, I will be back. I've got to go sing. Be back.
We have wandered afield anyway.
We do that.
Well, yeah, well, what else is new?
I can't. I talked about my 2 highlights, but I don't think. I don't know what else I wanted to.
I was going to
mention.
say let's do the Hugo discussion, but Sarah wanted to do that, and she's gone now.
Oh, I'm wanting to hear about is like this is the first year in a long time that there's nothing on the novel list that I've already read. Like I'm sure there were a couple of years where I'd read all of them before it even, like when it came out, I was like, oh, good, well, I've read all of them. And this year I'm like, I've not read any of these. So are there any, like Elizabeth, I don't know if you've read them. Is there anything that you
You'll
say I
be-
should give a go and or
I've got the list up
I
already.
don't think I've even heard
I've got
of
it
most
here
of
too.
them.
I actually have to admit that I've only read one of them, and that's The City in the Middle of the Night. A couple of others have been on my radar for a little while. Gideon the Ninth, A Memory Called Empire, and The 10,000 Doors of January. They're all on my list to tackle. I might do Middle Game by Shauna Maguire. I do tend to like her stuff, but I'm not sure about this one. And Cameron Hurley is not for me, so probably not.
No, is it too echoey in here, guys? Does this sound okay, or is it too echoey? Do I need some buds?
Fine. It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
So any of these, like, I think one of them I already looked up was a
No,
sequel
Sarah, I
one.
think you're going to need some buds. We are getting a bit of echo. So that again, Kirsten?
I was just going to say, are any of these ones that are sequels that I shouldn't like? Because it's like, well, if
No, none
they're
of
all,
them, in fact.
oh wow, okay.
Except, no, I don't think the Light Brigade is either. I think they're all first or standalone, mostly standalone
okay.
actually, except for Gideon the Ninth is definitely a first.
I think Memory Called Alpha is supposed to be a first as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Nothing's been published yet, which is, as far as I'm aware, it's not on the radar yet, but it is listed as being part of a series on Goodreads.
Okay.
So,
And
Yeah, I was just interested whether it's anything I should add to my to read list or not, because I actually haven't heard of any of them.
Okay, so I would recommend A Memory Called Empire, because that one's been likened to Ancillary Justice, which I know you enjoyed.
Yeah.
I've heard good things about that one too, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I know Karina wanted to read Gideon the Ninth because it was on
She's read
her
it.
wish list. Oh, she has now. Okay,
She read
cool.
it, she found it disappointing.
Oh.
And I've heard good things about the 10,000 Doors of January, especially if
Ditto.
you're into Portal Fantasy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Which
unsurprisingly,
you
It's a
are.
really
I
good
like that.
title. That's
Yeah.
a really good title.
I'll be giving those two a go, with the possibility of the other one you mentioned that you liked, Elizabeth.
Oh, no,
Gideon the
I don't
Ninth
think I would
doesn't.
recommend it for you, Mel.
The Charlie Jane Anders?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll skip it, because I'm as much as I respect her as an author, last time she was not my thing. So
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting book, but the characters are not nice people.
that's why
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
no,
like
that's
the
not a
first
me
one,
book
so-
then.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't read the first one either. I just couldn't handle anybody in it. They were awful people.
Like, the protagonist isn't too bad, but like the people around her are not nice.
Yeah, I don't deal well with that. Like, I
Yeah,
can deal
no.
with stupid, like the guy in this book we're reading at the moment. God, he's a fucking moron.
Oh,
No,
my
stop. That's
God.
next week. Stop it.
That's
Stop
next
it.
week, yeah.
Next week.
And I'm
Stop it.
But
not
I
even
can deal
100
with
pages
I
in
can deal
yet.
with morons as long as I don't hate them. Like
Anyway,
Yeah, but
that's for
I am
next
getting close
week.
to throwing it at the wall.
Next week.
Next week, stop it, guys. Novella, though, interestingly enough, because I've read two of them already.
Are we discussing Hugo's? I don't know what happened.
Yes,
Yes,
are.
we're on Hugo's. We
Okay.
only discussed novel first, so it's okay. We haven't done novella.
Yeah, because aren't we going to find out? I wanted to know what Mel
Yes.
and Elizabeth thought about Time War on this list.
I think it's a very good chance it'll be my first one.
Really?
I haven't finished it, but I like it a lot so far. And I don't like looking at the list. The only other one that I think is likely to, from what I've heard, the only other one that's likely to beat it is the Ted Chiang.
Did you not like To Be Taught If Fortunate?
I loved that
I
book.
liked it. I didn't like it enough to make it first on a Hugo ballot.
I
Okay,
would.
Interesting.
I would have put, like, I mean, to be fair, I've only read this one and that one. I haven't read any of the others.
Yeah.
But like, if I was choosing between these two, I'd definitely pick To Be Taught If Fortunate.
I
liked
think
it,
that
but I
was my
didn't-
question. I don't know, maybe I just don't know enough, but this didn't feel Hugo-y, if that's the
I
word.
thought it did to me, but I think there's a very good chance that Ted Chiang will take me out though, because I am a very big fan of Ted Chiang. So
I don't know. I reckon he'll have some stiff competition. River Solomons does well
I've heard bad things about The Deep. I love River Solomon's first novel, but I have not heard very good things about The Deep.
Okay. Okay.
Because I was looking forward to it, but everything I've been hearing is like didn't work as well as the first book did.
never mind. Sarah's wandered off again. Never mind.
Anyway, yeah. So
Yeah, you're still
she
with
just
us?
muted herself.
okay.
Yeah, I just muted myself because I was fucking around in the freezer. I'm here.
I like as for it being on this ballot, I feel like it's I think it benefits a lot from being in the in crowd. A lot.
Elaborate.
It's been talked about by authors.
Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
it's been talked about, it's been hyped a lot by the publisher, but also the authors are...
Podcasts have been talking about it.
Was
Yes.
Circe at all in any of this?
No.
No, because this is kind of where I kind of sit, because Circe is one that got hyped a lot, like a lot of podcasts talking about, a lot of different types of podcasts. Like I think I listened to 3 different ones. It was Imaginary Worlds, there was 99% Invisible, and there was another, and they all, like Circe was referred to on all of them. And yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah.
Wasn't Circe have been on last year's one?
I was just looking for that.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I just wondered if it had been in a previous one, because it may be my understanding of what makes a Hugo
Too
one
literary,
style
not
book.
enough genre.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe that's it. It wasn't
Yeah.
on the list last.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the.
And that's what I mean. Like,
shortlist
I
last
just
year.
don't like. To me, this just doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I just
Look,
don't know.
But
I just
it's
didn't
like
feel that
Elizabeth said,
sci-fi
it's being
enough.
talked about by the right people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the authors are in the in crowd.
Because that's like, in my opinion, that's why Shauna Maguire's still on this list for the novella, because honestly, it's the 6th book or something in the series. And as much as I'm still reading
Middle
the
Game
series,
is a standalone.
which one?
Middle Game.
No, I'm talking about the novella, In an Absent Dream.
Yeah.
And as much as I still enjoy the series, I don't think it's doing anything that's particularly different or new anymore. And why is it still there? Sorry, I must admit, I do have a
novelettes
this is what I wanted to,
that
I
are on
wanted
the
to hear about.
awards list.
Sorry, what was all that?
Yeah.
So I read 2 of the novelettes this last week that are on the list. So I read Emergency Skin and For He Can Creep. I really liked Emergency Skin because I always like N.K. Jemisin. For He Can Creep, I suppose people who like cats will enjoy it. I'm not sure what else to explain regarding that one, but I read that last night.
Cats as in the creatures, or cats as in the musical?
As in the creatures.
Okay.
In relation to Satan.
Oh, okay.
No. Cats are the best.
No. It's not like it's evil or anything like that. Anyway, you should read it. It's like 30 pages. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I didn't even notice that Ted. I didn't even know that
I found it on
Ted had
Amazon.
one in that
Saw
list as well from Exhalation. So I'm probably going to end up buying the book now.
Yeah, I liked Emergency Skin, and the other ones that I was seeing for the novelettes were really expensive, or I couldn't find it on Amazon. So Ted has 2 things on this Hugo's.
Yeah, the Ted Chiang ones are in a collection book that he's done. So you'd have to buy Exhalation to get both of those stories.
Give an award for best collection. Okay. Interesting. Sorry. The Australian Awards generally do an award for best collection or an anthology as well.
Yeah.
I always forget what crosses over and what doesn't.
Yeah, no, they don't have a collection one for this. I think that goes underneath related work.
No, I don't know that actually applies to actually fiction work, though.
The Australian Awards have already been done this year, haven't they?
No, the shortlists have been announced.
Oh.
Ditmar shortlists haven't been announced yet, and I mean, I'm quite surprised because voting closed nominations closed back in the 1st of March or something.
It could be with the current climate, things might have been pushed back a bit. Maybe people haven't been able to, I don't know. Who knows?
Sorry, Mel?
I was going to say, I realized why I was thinking it was best related work. I was thinking of things, what's the ones that they've done where they do the response to the authors?
Luminescent threads.
Those sorts of ones, and that's what's been in there. But you're right, that's not fiction. So
Yeah.
yeah, because I was actually reading something recently where someone was arguing for the fact that they would have been better off doing something which was for collected works rather than doing the best series one, which yes, I agree with. Sorry, not a fan of the best series category.
Aurora Rising is on the Aurelius Awards.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
it's
is.
also did I see that somewhere else? Was that on the
It's sadly not on the Hugo equivalent because I was a bit cranky about that.
But as I was also listening, where did we get this discussion from? But it's in my head about the fact. No, it must have been Galactic Suburbia chat. We were talking about the fact that the YA category on the Hugo's list is essentially voted by adults, not what's actually popular with the YA people. And so it's usually authors that are recognised by adults rather than actually what's good in YA at the moment.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Because that was part of the other discussion. So that the people who were talking about it, they were arguing that best series and the Lodestar were kind of useless. Sorry, I'm not talking to you, Siri. Best series and the Lodestar were kind of useless on the Hugo. The best series were for a very different reason, but the Lodestar, because the people who are voting in the Hugos are not the right people to vote for the Lodestar.
Yeah. Anyway, we have wandered afield, and I'm wondering whether Matt would be interested in a discussion of the Hugos. So perhaps we should wrap it up.
Oh yes, we should tell him. I forgot.
Yeah,
that's a good
right.
point.
I'll also
forgot my
end
own
the
husband,
recording.
sorry.
Well, yeah, we'll end the recording here too because we talked about a lot anyway. Anybody who's out there, thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.